Hi, you're listening to What's New Today, and this episode is part 4 of our 5-part series on the queens who ruled India. This episode is about a queen who ruled one of the richest kingdoms in India about 800 years ago, and she came to power because, surprise, surprise, an ancient Hindu tradition made it possible. Now, history isn't just about names of rulers and dates and dynasties. But it's really the stories of people, the stories that help us understand how the world was and how some people changed the way the world was. To discuss this queen, I'm joined by a 12-year-old who's done her little bit of research on this ruler.
Hi, I'm Trayee. I live in India in Tamil Nadu. I go to Vidya Mandir. I'm 12 turning 13 and I'm in 8th grade. We're going to be talking about Rudramadevi. She's like one of my favorite queens because she gave rights to women. Moreover, there was this king who attacked her from the northwest. I forgot his name. He thought that she was just a queen, so he will defeat her forces easily. But she not only defeated him, she even pursued his army and forced him to pay a tribute of 1,200,000 gold coins to her.
Wonderful. Because you brought up this point about how she chased a king back into his territory, far, far away from her own territory that he had invaded. There's an interesting story regarding that. So when she chased this king back inside his territory, in his records, the story goes to say that he just walked back as though he just wanted to walk back to his own world. And there is no record in his kingdom that he paid any tribute to her. But we do have records from Rudramadevi's kingdom saying that she defeated this king and that king was forced to pay her a tribute. Now, between the two, only one story has to be true, right? And either one of them could have been true.
I expect that Rudramadevi's story was true because, for one, the king's story actually says that he walked back to his kingdom. Two, there was no way that Rudramadevi could have just made up the 1,200,000 gold coins.
Why not?
Why would she bother to make it up, right? She could have just said, I defeated the king and left it at that. There's no shame in admitting that she did not make him pay tribute. But there is shame in admitting for the king that he had to pay the tribute. That's why the Rudramadevi story is more believable.
That's one valid point of reasoning, Trayee. There's one more source that has affirmed the queen's story. So there was an archaeological dig somewhere where they found gold coins that were minted with that other king's insignia.
I know this one. She made him pay tribute with the king's insignia imprinted on it as a sign that he had been defeated and was paying tribute to her.
Correct. So when they dug up and they found all of these coins in her territory, we can safely assume that he did pay her a tribute. All right, now that we're done with a lot of laudatory praises on Rudramadevi, shall we get some basics right for listeners who may have no familiarity with this queen? Number one, which part of India did she rule?
I think I read that it was modern day Telangana, India. Yeah, Andhra Pradesh and Telangana together.
Wonderful. And do you know which time period we're talking about?
We're talking about the 1200s and 1300s.
Wonderful. So, Trayee, I thought today's episode, instead of just narrating stories, we'll play a small game. I'm going to make 5 sets of statements. In each set, I'll make 2 statements. Only one of them is true. And you'll have to identify which is true and which is false.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. So, which of these is true? Rudramadevi was directly appointed as a reigning monarch after her father's death, or she became the reigning monarch on her husband's death as regent to her child.
Father's death. Actually, technically, she was her father appointed her the queen at the age of 14, and she ruled beside him.
Perfect. She was appointed directly by her father. And there's a very interesting story about what her father had to do to appoint her as the monarch, because it was not customary for a daughter to be appointed as the heir to the throne, right? Did
Yeah.
you read about what her father had to do?
Uh, I think that her father wanted to perform a yajna called the Putraka Yajna, which would give her the rights of a boy, the rights and benefits of a boy.
Yep. Nice story, right?
Yeah.
I found that story very interesting. All right, now here's the second couplet. So, between these two statements, one of them is true. Number one, the main source of riches to this kingdom, to the Kakatiya kingdom, were the agricultural products that were grown on the fertile lands by the river Godavari, or is the main source of riches the metals that were mined beneath the ground?
I think it is the first one because Bihar and Jharkhand are very famous for their mining centers. But Andhra Pradesh is not that famous for mining.
I like your reasoning. Yes, modern day Jharkhand, Bihar, Orissa, these places are very rich centers of mining. Andhra Pradesh doesn't rank that highly today, but surprise, surprise, Andhra Pradesh and Telangana was the only known source of diamonds in the entire world up until the 17th century. Nowhere else in the world were diamonds found.
So
And
diamonds were found in Andhra Pradesh. Are diamonds still found in Andhra Pradesh?
that's a good question. I'm not sure if there are a lot of diamonds still left there. I think a good chunk of the diamonds have been mined there. There's a very famous diamond called the Kohinoor diamond. Have you heard?
It's the biggest diamond in the world.
It's one of the biggest diamonds in the world, and it is right now sitting on the crown of the British monarchy.
Oh, right. In one of your earlier episodes, you mentioned that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you're able to recollect that. So yes, so the Kohinoor diamond is supposed to have been mined from this kingdom only. When Rudramadevi was still the ruler, the Kohinoor diamond had already been mined, and because the prevailing beliefs then was that this diamond should not be used by humans, the very powerful diamond. It was used on the crown of a goddess in a temple. But subsequently, when it was plundered and taken away by Malik Kafur to the Delhi Sultanate and then the Mughals, and then it went off to Afghanistan, went off to Britain, they've all been using in their crowns. The Kohinoor diamond is known to be very unlucky for whoever wears it, actually. So as long as it was in the Kakatiya kingdom, the Kohinoor diamond was on the crown of the goddess, of the main deity of the kingdom. So
If it's considered so unlucky, why does a British queen wear it?
good question. I think they wear it less often, but they like to own it, or they like to show that they own it. Okay, now on to the third one. Between these two, which of them is true? Number one, Rudramadevi had a pretty easy time ruling her kingdom because her dad had appointed her and nobody was going to object to that. Or is this true that she had a pretty tough time fighting patriarchy inside her kingdom because a lot of nobles objected to a woman coming to power?
She had a tough time because the nobles did object because her father died and her husband died. So the nobles started questioning her authority because they thought that she was an only queen. She was only a queen.
You're absolutely right. The nobles did object to her authority. Now, as a result, what Rudramadevi did was that because a lot of these nobles and these powerful people did not support her, when she had to fight many of these wars that would keep on recurring because People from the north and the south and the east kept attacking her kingdom. She had to fill the army with whoever was willing to support her, and most of them were people from the lower castes. They were not the elite born or people of noble birth. So, as a result, she rewarded people who performed extraordinarily well, while fighting her battles. And she rewarded all of those who had been faithful to her. And it was in her reign that a lot of people of lower caste birth became quite rich because they got grants of large pieces of land as they supported Rudramadevi. And this practice of granting land as reward based on the merit of their performance and not based on their birth is something that Rudramadevi seemed to have started. It started because she had no other choice. But this practice was continued by subsequent kings of even neighboring kingdoms. For example, when the Vijayanagara kingdom, have you heard of Vijayanagara kingdom?
Yeah, that's where Tenali Raman was born.
Absolutely. All those famous stories of Tenali Rama come from the Vijayanagara kingdom. So even those kings, like Krishna Devaraya, used to follow the same practice that Rudramadevi started. So,
Cool.
yeah.
She left
well,
a really long legacy.
She did actually, yes. All right, now on to the fourth set of statements. Can you tell me which of these is true? We have very little historical records of her rule, or do we have quite a lot of recordings in that we've got from, say, archaeological digs as well as recordings from travelers elsewhere? Which of these
We've
two?
gotten a lot of recordings. Example, they thought that she had died a peaceful death. However, recent archaeological digs have found that in that same time period that she was supposed to have died a peaceful death, they found archaeological carvings on stone that depict her riding into battle and the god of death rising up. So this shows that she really died in a battle and not a peaceful death.
Oh, this is very interesting. I didn't know about this carvings that have shown her life, but I came across this very interesting recording that was done. There's a very famous international traveler called Marco Polo. I'm sure you'll have played that game, right? Marco Polo. Did you know the origin of that game?
No.
No? Okay. Marco Polo was a very famous international traveler. He traveled from Italy across the entire world and he used to record his observations. But anyway, back to the story. Marco Polo, in all of his travels across the entire world, has mentioned only one queen, and that
Oh
is
my God.
Rudramadevi. Yeah. So we do have very authentic sources that have recorded her reign, how she ruled, and all the details of how she granted lands to people who fought valiantly in her army and that it was based on merit. And all of these points that we discussed, we do have authentic proof.
Okay.
And Marco Polo's recordings were one of those primary sources for us. All right, now coming to the last point, tell me which of these is true. If you visited Andhra Pradesh today, and if you walked up to people living there and asked them, have you heard of this great famous queen called Rudramadevi? They would say, oh, yes, we know about her. Or do you think it is true that if you walked up to somebody in Andhra and asked them, have you heard of this famous queen Rudramadevi? And they would turn around and say, Rudra who? Which of these do you think is true?
There was a movie shot about Rudramadevi. So she's probably also become famous.
Yeah, I think the movie was a blockbuster. So I think it is safe to assume that a lot of people do know about Rudramadevi. So hopefully movies and podcast series like this will make these queens very famous. Wonderful. So with that, we come to an end of this recording. All the stories and many of the facts mentioned as part of our conversation today were taken from a book called The Women Who Ruled India by Archana Garodia Gupta.
My source of information were two YouTube videos I watched. I also read the same book you are talking about.
Thanks, Trayee. I had a fantastic time chatting with you. It was lovely to hear you reasoning about life based on how you view the world. Thanks a ton for doing all that reading and researching. And to our listeners, I'm leaving links to the books that I'd referred to, the videos that Trayee watched, all of them in our show notes below. And if you think this episode is something your friends and family would also enjoy, please do share the link to this episode and help us grow our audience. See you all in our next episode, the last of our 5-part episode series on the queens who ruled India.